So you sent over this article, South Korea's Deadly Obsession with Success. It's fascinating, but also, well, pretty unsettling.
Right.
And it kind of hit me right away with this stark image. You picture Seoul at night,
Right.
all glittering and modern.
Mm-hmm.
And then you learn about the Mapo Bridge. It's got these amazing views, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has this really tragic side. It's known as a place where, well, young Koreans facing just immense struggles
Yeah.
sometimes see it as the only way out.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is.
Yeah.
So what we want to do in this deep dive is kind of unpack the engine behind all this intense pressure,
Right.
especially on the youth there.
Right.
We'll look at mental health, the education system, which sounds incredibly demanding, and this huge cultural focus on image.
And that Mepo Bridge example, it really jumps out, especially thinking about the article. They actually tried to rebrand it, didn't they?
Yeah, the Bridge of Life or something.
The Bridge of Life, putting up positive messages, images. You can see the good intention there, I suppose. But the fact that suicide attempts actually went up afterwards, like over 400%.
Whoa.
Yeah. It just shows how surface level things like that can be when you're dealing with these really deep societal problems.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on something much bigger.
Exactly. A systemic wound. And then they had to put up higher fences, surveillance, those crisis phones. And that detail about the wind noise, a teenager trying to get help on the phone but couldn't hear over the wind.
Oh, that's awful.
It just highlights how hard it is to actually reach people,
Yeah.
even when the support is technically there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as we get into this article you shared, it's worth remembering how fast South Korea changed, this miracle reversal they talk about.
Right, from poverty to this major economy really quickly.
In such a short time. But the article suggests that maybe this rapid growth created its own problems, like immense pressure, maybe expectations that just aren't being met, especially for the younger generation.
Yeah, now they're dealing with pretty crushing inequality, those really low birth rates we hear about, cultural divides, and this super competitive meritocracy.
An unforgiving one, it sounds like.
Definitely. So if we're talking pressure, let's look at one of the big sources the article points to, the education system.
Okay.
I mean, the daily routine described, it's just staggering. You've got students starting their day well before 6:30 a.m.
Before 6:30.
Yeah, long commutes often, then school,
Yeah.
like 8 a.m. straight through to 4:30 p.m. and get this off with no breaks.
No breaks all day. That's intense.
Intense is the word.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop there. Then it's off to Hagwons.
Right, the night schools.
Exactly. Private cram schools, often from 6 p.m. till 10 p.m., sometimes even later.
Wow.
And then they still have homework, another long commute, often not getting to sleep until midnight, maybe even later.
Good grief.
Yeah.
You just wonder about the exhaustion, obviously, but also, what does that lack of downtime do?
Well, the sleep deprivation alone.
Yeah, the source mentioned that they average only about 6 hours of sleep.
Only 6 hours. Compare that to kids in, other OECD countries. It's a huge difference.
And we know sleep is critical for brain development, especially then. Impulse control, all that.
Right. And in a culture that values self-discipline so highly, you have to think that chronic lack of sleep must impact their ability to cope, their overall well-being. It's got to.
Definitely.
And the money involved.
Yeah.
That was striking, too. The article says even lower-income families are spending almost as much on education as they do on food.
As on food. That's an incredible level of sacrifice.
It really shows you how vital educational success is seen in that society, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Makes you wonder, though, is that investment always paying off in the way people hope? Or are there hidden costs?
That's the question. So, okay, all this schooling, all this pressure, it all builds up to this one single event, right?
Yeah.
The CSAT.
The College Scholastic Ability Test.
Yeah.
Yeah. The article paints it as like the culmination of years and years of this grind.
An 8-hour exam. 8 hours. Hugely competitive, very heavy on memorization. It's basically the gatekeeper.
So what really stands out about its importance, based on the article?
Well, its position is the absolute make-or-break moment. It's not just about getting into a university. It's about getting into the elite ones.
Like Seoul National University.
Exactly. That's seen as the top prize because, like the article says, that's your ticket, your pathway into the big companies, the Samsungs, the Hyundais.
It creates such a narrow path for what's considered success.
Extremely narrow.
And the source really lays out this stark difference in outcomes depending on your score.
Yeah.
Like, do well, and you're potentially set up for financial security, social respect, a good future, not just for you, but your family.
Right. The pressure isn't just personal.
But if you don't perform well,
Uh,
it's described almost like failure means shame, being shut out, maybe ending up in lower paying work with very few second
yeah,
chances.
incredibly high stakes. Put so much weight on that one day, that one test.
Are there discussions there about, other ways, other paths, or is it really just this one funnel?
That's a really important point. And the article touches on the aftermath, the emotional fallout from the SESAT.
Yeah.
You have some students with this huge emotional release, screaming, crying,
Hmm.
which just tells you the level of pressure they were under.
Understandable, I guess.
But then you also have this deep despair setting in for those who feel they didn't make the cut, like they failed everyone, their families, even the country, in a way.
Oh, wow.
And when you connect that feeling back to, the Mapo Bridge stories,
Yeah.
it's clear that for some, that feeling of failure is just unbearable.
It really puts that statistic into context, doesn't it? South Korea having the highest suicide rate among OECD nations for people under 40.
Exactly. It shows it's not just about the exams, even though they're a huge part. There's more going on.
Which I guess brings us to another big theme in the article. This intense focus on image.
Yeah. Rooted in Confucian culture, the article says, where appearance, reputation, it's all paramount.
And now you throw social media into that mix. Instagram especially.
Which is apparently huge there, over 60% of the population on it.
60%. So you can imagine the effect on young people constantly seeing these curated lives.
Yeah, and curating their own, right. It becomes this stage for presenting the perfect life, often totally unrealistic.
The filters, the airbrushing.
It just creates this constant pressure to match an ideal that isn't even real.
Yeah.
And if the culture already pushes perfectionism.
It's like a perfect storm for anxiety and feeling inadequate.
Absolutely. You have to wonder if people are talking more about the downsides, the mental health impact of social media in that kind of environment.
Yeah. And then it gets even stranger, like with these virtual influencers the article mentions, like Rosie.
Oh, right. These completely artificial beings, flawless, digital.
It's almost dystopian, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
even humans trying their best to look perfect through surgery or whatever aren't enough anymore. Now the standard is literally computer generated.
It really drives home how relentless that chase for an impossible standard is. Imagine being a young person trying to figure out who you are, what's real, when you're comparing yourself to, well, to basically a perfect avatar.
What does that do to your self-esteem, your sense of what's achievable?
Exactly. It's a lot of pressure.
So, digging into all this from the article, it really seems to shift the focus away from just blaming individuals.
Definitely.
Like putting higher fences on the Mepo Bridge. Okay, maybe it helps in the immediate moment, but it doesn't fix the reasons people end up there.
Not the root causes, no.
Yeah.
The article points to this toxic mix, doesn't it? The intense education system, these sky-high societal expectations, the image culture we just talked about.
And probably not enough accessible mental health support.
Ah,
Or maybe stigma around seeking it.
yeah, and inadequate support systems seem to be part of it, too. It's all interconnected.
The takeaway seems to be that young people there feel trapped, almost. Like their worth is measured by such narrow things, grades, looks, job title.
Right, and if you feel like you're not hitting those marks, or you just can't keep up with the pressure, yeah, where you go? It can lead to this really profound hopelessness.
It really makes you stop and think about the bigger picture. South Korea's situation is stark, but it forces us to ask how any society defines success. What's the human cost when those definitions get too narrow, too demanding? Maybe it's a chance for all of us listening to kind of reflect. What do we think a truly meaningful, healthy life path looks like? For ourselves, yeah, but also for the next generation.
And that leads to a final thought maybe for you, our listener. Thinking about these pressures in South Korea, what echoes do you see, or maybe what contrasts, in your own community, in your own life? How could we maybe help shape definitions of success that value well-being, resilience, a more whole picture of what it means to thrive, instead of just these narrow, sometimes impossible targets? It feels like a really important conversation to continue.